Hello, welcome back to Ruhoni Sewing. I am your host Ruth. Today I am going to show you how to draft a peplum. This is a continuation from our previous video where I have shown you how to draft a shoulder princess seam. I have linked that video in the description box below. Without further delays, let us start. These are the materials needed in this tutorial. We have our curved ruler, tape measure, straight ruler, we have our rubber and pencil, we have two patterns. This one is for the front and this other one is for the back. They are just starting from the waist to the hip, and we have our pattern paper. So before we continue, I'm going to try my level best to show you the design of our peplum. Remember, these are the top of our blouses. There is a princess seam for the front piece, and at the center we have another piece that is for the front, and for the back we have the princess seam and the seam at the center. So this is our peplum, the bottom part of our blouse, but we are going also to have a design here at the center, continuing from the center part of our blouse. So these two pieces are going to be on top of the other piece, and for the back we are only going to have one piece. Remember to leave a space at the top as well as at the sides of your pattern. We left more here because we are going to add some inches to our pattern. So here is our pattern. Remember to make sure that the center back touches the side line and the top line, that is your waist, touching the top line, and then secure your pattern. Now let us start to trace our pattern. Remove the pins and redraw the pattern well. Label your pattern accordingly. So now let us start to draw our peplum. At the hip line, add 2 centimeters, as well as at the center back, add 2 centimeters. So with your ruler, extend to this point that we've just marked, and then draw a line from these points to the waistline at the top. Now, to avoid sharp corners, measure 0.5 centimeters going up. Using your curved ruler, draw a slightly curved line, you see, to avoid that sharp corner, and do the same for the line at the center back. Here we are. So our next step will be to close this dart, but before, we need to divide our waistline into 4 to 5 equal parts. So our waistline is 10.5 minus the dart. So we are going now to divide our waistline into 2.5 inches equal parts. So continue to put the marks, and our last part will be slightly less than 2.5. With the aid of your square ruler, draw now the lines, whether they are dotted or straight lines going down. And now let us start to cut our pattern. So here is our pattern. In our next step now, let us close the dart. So cut up to a point where the dart ends here, and then take one leg and also cut up to that point. Leave a very small space. Like that. Now move your pattern as I did here so that we close the dart. Put a self-tape and we are done. Now with your scissors, cut the lines that we've just drawn all the way but not through. Here we are. Put your pattern on top of a pattern paper. Make sure to leave enough space so that you can add seam allowance and secure your pattern. So now to spread our pattern, I've decided to leave 1 inch. So as you can see, I'm moving the parts of my pattern by measuring 1 inch and secure them with a sellotape. Now redraw your pattern as shown here. With the aid of the curved ruler, draw the curved lines well. Put a mark to show where the dart was. Remove pins and tape. And here is your pattern. Now redraw your pattern well as shown here. So draw the center back line and label the rest of your pattern and add the seam allowance. So now cut your pattern. And here is our back peplum piece. Let us now continue with our front piece. We have already traced our pattern, but we are not going to add any inches at the center front. We are only going to add 2 inches as we did with our back on our hip side. Draw the line and connect it to the waist line. Before we continue, let me show you the design again. We will have a design at the center front. Remember, we had left 1 inch at the top. So we will do the same at the waistline. For our bottom piece, we are going to measure 1 inch. And also measure 1 inch at the hip line too. And with your ruler, draw a dotted line from the waistline to the hip line. This line will give us the direction to where the shape of our second piece of the peplum is going to be. Again, as we did with our back, divide your waistline into 2.5 inches parts. The last one is not going to be 2.5 inches. And draw the lines as we did with our back going down. Label that second line as center front too. Now cut your pattern. It is time to close the dart as we did with our back piece. Again, cut the lines but not through. Now with our front piece, remember we did not add any inches from our center front line. So our center front is going to be on fold. So it should be lying on a straight line as here. Put a mark to show the mark for the center front where we're going to have our design, and also show the mark for the dart. So here is our front pattern. We have our waist, hip, center front and center front too. I've added 0.5 inches, 1 inch and 0.5 as seam allowance. Our center front again is going to be on fold. So here is our pattern. But remember, we need to make a pattern for these two pieces. They are going to start from the center front too, and so we need to make a copy. And so here are our patterns. Take one copy and draw a curved line starting from the center front too. Here I'm using my curved ruler. You can also draw it freely by your hand. Here is the curve. Now add seam allowance before you cut this part of your pattern. Cut your pattern. So just to clarify, the second peplum piece is going to be on top of the other one, like this, with that design. So we've come to an end of our tutorial. We will have two pieces, the top part of our peplum and one piece for the bottom front piece, and for the back we will have two pieces because they are going to be joined here. We will have a seam at the center.